She was the kind of woman people pretended not to see. Too big, they said. Too much. Her own father sold her like livestock to a man who told her daily she was an embarrassment, who put his hands around her throat and told her she deserved it, who filed a warrant the moment she ran, not because she stole anything, but because she dared to say no. She ran into a Montana blizzard with nothing but her mother's shoes and the last shred of herself she hadn't let him take. And she ended up in a cabin on a mountain with a broken man and a hungry baby. And somehow, she ended up exactly where she was meant to be. Welcome to a channel that honors the stories the world tried to silence, of women who were told they were worth nothing and proved every word wrong, of cowboys learning to feel again. A woman the world calls worthless can become the foundation of everything if she finds the courage to stop running and start building. If Clara's story already has you feeling something, leave a comment below.
The woman just looked at Silas, her eyes showing no fear at all. "Put her down," he growled, his voice raw as a winter wind. The woman's gaze was soft. "She'd been crying for 2 days straight," she said quietly. "I couldn't just leave her be." "Let me finish feeding her," the woman said, her voice steady as a rock. "She's been hungry a long, long time." Silas scanned the small cabin. No threat he could see. The fire was going strong, and his daughter's blankets were folded neat. The table, usually a mess of his own making, was clean as a whistle. A pot of venison stew was simmering over the fire. This stranger hadn't just broken in. She'd made his house a home again. "Who in the blazes are you?" he asked, lowering the rifle just a bit. "I'm Clara," she said, gently patting the baby's back. "I was just passing through when I heard her cries." Silas gave a harsh laugh. "Nobody just passes through the Montana mountains in December. Not unless they're running from something bad." "I'll take her," Silas said, finally putting his rifle against the wall. He crossed the room in 2 big steps. Clara stood and carefully handed the baby over. Her hands were surprisingly soft, but he saw fresh scratches on her wrists. Birdie snuggled right into his beard, smelling of soap and warm milk. "How long you been here?" he asked, his voice softer now. 2 days, Clara answered. The cabin was freezing cold, and she was all alone. A wave of guilt washed over Silas. He'd thought he'd left enough wood and food to last. He figured she'd be fine, but he'd been wrong, and this stranger had saved his little girl. Silas took a good long look at Clara. She was a big woman, the kind folks in town would whisper about behind their hands. But out here in the wilderness, her size meant she was strong. It meant she could survive. Her eyes held a deep sadness, the look of someone who expected the world to be cruel. "Where were you headed?" he asked. Her hands twisted together. "Just away." "Away from what?" he pressed. "If you're bringing trouble to my door, I need to know." "I'm not bringing trouble," she said, meeting his gaze. "I'll leave as soon as I can." Just then, the wind howled, rattling the whole cabin. Snow began to whip past the windows. The storm he'd been trying to outrun had finally arrived. "That storm ain't clearing any time soon," Silas stated flatly. Clara's face fell. "I can sleep in the barn." "The barn ain't fit for a dog," he said, shaking his head. "You'll freeze to death out there." He sighed, feeling the weight of his next words. "You helped my daughter. I won't send you out to die. You can stay here till the storm passes." He laid down the rules right then and there. 1 room, no privacy, and no questions asked. The second the snow stopped, she was gone. "Understood," she whispered. "The stew's ready," Clara said, breaking the silence. She handed him a bowl, and the smell of hot food made his stomach rumble something fierce. He hadn't had a real meal in days. He ate standing up, holding Birdie, while Clara sat quietly by the fire. It had been too long since someone had cooked for him. "You're good with her," he admitted between bites. Clara just nodded. "I raised my 5 younger brothers and sisters." The way she said it, it was clear they weren't in her life anymore. "She was desperate," Clara added quietly. "Desperate enough for help from anyone. Even me. That last part was filled with a bitterness that tugged at something in Silas's chest. Later, Silas put Bertie down in her cradle. She went to sleep easier than she ever did for him alone. When he turned around, Clara was already washing the bowls, working silent and keeping to herself. The cabin was warm. His daughter was safe. And for the first time in what felt like forever, the place didn't feel so empty. As night fell, Silas sat at the table cleaning his rifle, needing something to do with his hands. He watched her for a moment, then she looked up and asked him a question that hit him right in the gut. "How long you been out here alone with that baby?" He looked from her to his sleeping daughter. "She's my girl," he said simply. "Where I go, she goes." "She must be mighty special to you." Silas's hand froze on his rifle. Special was not a big enough word. Bertie was the only thing keeping him tied to this world. "His wife," Clara asked, her voice soft. "Dead." The word was flat and final. "A fever took her 6 weeks after Bertie came." "I'm sorry. Do not be. Death is just a part of life out here. You either accept it or you do not make it." But he knew that was a lie. He had not accepted it. Not really. He just learned how to carry the weight of it. Clara pulled her blankets tight around her. "I will try to be quiet." Silas just grunted, turning back to his work. He was almost done when he heard her whisper, "Thank you." In the firelight, she looked younger, wrapping her arms around her knees, trying to make herself small. "Did not have much of a choice," Silas said. "Cannot send a woman out into a blizzard. Some men would have. I am not some men." "No," she said with a tired little smile. "I do not think you are." He finished with his rifle and checked his traps. Soon, Clara's breathing was slow and steady. She was worn clear out. An hour later, Silas banked the fire and laid down, but he did not take his boots off. You always sleep ready for what might come. But listening to Bertie on one side and Clara on the other, he felt a calm he had not felt in 16 long months. The cabin felt like a home again, not just a shelter. That feeling was a dangerous thing. Clara was a stranger who would leave when the storm passed. He would be alone again. Silas woke to someone humming. For a single heartbeat, he thought it was his Emmeline, that the last 16 months had been a bad dream. Then the cold truth hit him. Emmeline was gone. He opened his eyes. The fire was crackling, and Bertie's cradle was empty. He sat straight up, his hand reaching for the knife he kept under his pillow. "She is fine," Clara said from across the room. She was holding Bertie in her lap, feeding her. "She woke up about an hour ago, so I kept her quiet to let you rest." His heart was pounding in his chest. "Do not do that. Do not take her without asking me." "I'm sorry," she said, her face falling. "I just thought I was helping. Waking him up would have been more help." The smell of coffee reached him then. "Found your coffee," Clara said. "I figured you could use some." Outside, the storm was still howling. They were snowed in good. "We have enough food for about 2 weeks," Clara said. "Maybe 3 if we are careful." "The storm will break before then," he said. "Tell me about your people," Silas said, taking a sip of coffee. "Why? You are in my house, taking care of my daughter. I ought to know who you are." "Fair enough." Clara set Bertie down on a blanket. "I grew up in Virginia City. My father was a shoemaker. Life was good until my mother passed. After that, my father took to drinking. When his gambling debts got too high, he decided I needed a husband. He sold me to a merchant named Virgil Conincade. My father said he was a man with prospects." The bitterness in her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "You did not want to marry him. What I wanted did not matter. At first, Virgil was charming. He said I was lucky a man like him would want a woman my size. Then he started trying to change me. He told me what to eat and how to act. He called me his fat little project he was going to fix." Silas set his cup down slowly. "Fix you?" He had an opinion on everything about me. When I finally told him I would not starve myself for him, he hit me. The only sound in the cabin was Bertie playing on the floor. "So you ran," Silas said. "So I ran. The night before the wedding, I packed my things and just walked away. He will follow you, Silas said. Men like that do not let go. I know, she whispered. That is why I have to keep moving. That is why I cannot stay. And in that quiet moment, Silas realized they were both running from something. The oats are ready, Clara said, breaking the silence. They ate while Bertie played on the floor. It was the best meal Silas had tasted in a year. You are a good cook, he told her. My future husband did not think so. Virgil only cared about the money my father promised him. Then he is a fool. Clara looked up, pure surprise on her face. I mean it, Silas said. Any man who cannot see what is right in front of him is a fool. You are smart and strong. The rest of it does not amount to a hill of beans. A deep blush spread across Clara's cheeks. Nobody had ever said anything like that to her before. You would think a simple act of kindness would not shake a person to their core. But when Clara saw what Silas had done, her eyes went wide with a shock that was painful to see. She looked at him like he was a phantom, like this moment of decency was a cruel joke. He had nearly forgotten how to be a good man. Grief had whittled him down to something hard and sharp. But for 3 days, a blizzard had trapped them together in his small cabin. On the second morning, he woke to find her standing by the window, holding his baby daughter, Birdie. They were just watching the snow fall, and they looked like they belonged. The sight hit Silas so hard he had to turn away. Later, Silas grumbled something about his dwindling supplies. Clara just looked at him over her shoulder. There is a world of difference between surviving and truly living, she said. And she was right. For 16 long months, all he had done was survive. Where will you go when this storm breaks? He asked, standing beside her. South, she answered, her voice barely a whisper. Somewhere my fiancé, Virgil, will not think to look. Her arms tightened around little Birdie. A man like him does not stop looking. Not after being embarrassed in front of the entire town. A cold resolve settled in Silas's gut. Let him come, he said, his voice hard as frozen earth. If he shows his face here, he will regret it. Clara stared at him, her expression a mix of fear and confusion. You do not even know me. Why would you protect me? Silas just shrugged. I have never cared for bullies. At that moment, Birdie reached for him, and he took her into his arms without a second thought. For a brief instant, they almost felt like a family. Later, as he worked on his knife, she asked him, Why did you come out here, all alone with a baby in this wild country? Silas told her about his wife, Emmeline. He explained how after she passed, he could not bear the pity of the people in town. So he took Birdie and built this cabin with his own 2 hands. Sometimes being lonely is better, he finished. Clara nodded, her own hands working bread dough on the table. Being lonely in a crowd is the worst kind of loneliness, she said. Then she told him about Virgil. To the town, he was a wealthy merchant. She was just the poor girl he had agreed to marry. They did not see him pinch my arm, she whispered, or hear him tell me I was disgusting. My own father only saw the money Virgil paid him. He sold me. The ugly truth of her words hung heavy in the small cabin. Tell me about Emmeline, Clara said softly, changing the subject. I can see the love you had for her and how you care for your daughter. No one had ever asked him that. A small smile touched Silas's lips for the first time in ages. She was a schoolteacher from Kentucky, he began. The most stubborn woman I ever knew. The very first thing she said to me was that my horse needed new shoes and I ought to be ashamed of myself. He shook his head, remembering. I think I was halfway in love with her right then. She was light, Silas said, trying to find the words. Everything about me is rough. She was warmth and laughter. His voice cracked as he spoke. He told Clara about the difficult birth, how the doctor was 3 days away, and how he watched Emmeline fade for 6 long weeks before a fever finally took her. Right at the end, he said, his voice thick with sorrow. She made me promise. She told me Birdie needed a father who could still feel joy, a man who would not let grief turn him to stone. Clara looked at him. her own eyes shining with tears. "Have you kept that promise?" Silas stared into Bertie's cradle, the weight of the world on his shoulders. Some days he felt like he was failing her. Clara's voice cut through his worries, firm and clear. "You are not failing. That little girl smiles when she sees you, Silas. She reaches for you and snuggles into your chest like it is the safest place on earth. A child only does that when they feel loved. You are getting the most important thing right." His heart ached, not from sadness, but from a hope he had not felt in 16 long months. He thought just keeping her alive was the best a broken man could do. But Clara was right. Bertie did smile for him. Maybe that was enough. That evening they ate salt pork and beans at the table together for the first time. Bertie sat happily in his lap, trying to grab his spoon. "This is real good," Silas said, and he truly meant it. "It is simple," Clara replied. "Simple is good. Simple is honest." For the first time, a real smile lit up her face. "You ought to smile more often," Silas said before he could stop himself. The smile faded. "Virgil used to say I smiled too much. Said it made me look simple." Silas grunted. Virgil was a fool. A real laugh bubbled out of Clara, filling the cabin with a joy it had not known in a long, long time. Later that night, lying in the dark, Silas listened to the sound of two people breathing besides himself. Clara would have to leave when the storm passed. He knew this was just for a little while. But a dangerous thought took root in his heart. He did not want it to be temporary anymore. On the 6th day, the storm began to die down. By morning, the mountain passes would be clear. By morning, Clara would be gone. That evening, a strange sound cut through the wind. Hoofbeats. Silas grabbed his rifle in a heartbeat. "Stay with Bertie," he whispered to Clara, moving toward the window. A lone rider on a worn-out horse was struggling through the snow. A deputy's badge was pinned to his coat. Silas leveled the rifle and opened the door. The deputy looked up, his face raw from the wind. "I am looking for a woman," he stammered, his teeth chattering. "Hannah Clara Prescott. She is wanted for theft." Silas did not lower the rifle. "There is no woman here but my wife." Inside, he heard Clara's sharp gasp. The deputy swayed, about to fall from his horse. Silas made a choice. "Get inside before you freeze solid," he said. He hauled the deputy inside and set him by the fire. Clara stood in the far corner, her face as white as a ghost, holding Bertie and the small rifle he had given her. The deputy's eyes locked onto her. "Well now," he said, "this makes my job easier." Silas stepped right between them. "Name is Deputy Chester Rollins," he said, his hand shaking as he reached inside his coat. "What are the charges?" "Theft," Rollins answered, holding up a folded paper. "Virgil Consincade claims she stole $300 in family jewelry." "That is a lie." Clara's voice trembled with rage from behind Silas. "I took nothing but what was mine." "A judge will decide that, ma'am," Rollins said, looking at Silas. "Now step aside. She is in my home. That makes it my business." "There is no Clara Prescott here," Silas said, his voice cold as ice. "Just my wife, Clara Harker. We were married 2 months back." The deputy frowned. "Consincade did not say anything about her being married." "Consincade does not know everything," Silas replied. "Now let me see that warrant." Silas took the paper and scanned it. He had seen enough legal documents to know this was trash, bought and paid for by a rich man. He looked straight at Rollins. "This is garbage." Then he tossed the warrant into the fire. "What are you doing?" Rollins shouted, jumping forward. Silas pointed the rifle square at his chest. The deputy froze. "Here is what is going to happen," Silas said quietly. "You are going to warm up and eat the food my wife gives you. Tomorrow you will ride back and tell Virgil Consincade you lost her trail in the storm. Tell him you reckon she is dead." "Case closed." "I cannot do that," Rollins protested. "I swore an oath." "You swore to protect people," Silas said in a low voice. "Now you look at her, deputy. Really look. Does she look like a thief? Or does she look like a woman who ran for her life?" Rollins turned to look at Clara. She stood tall, her chin up, fear and defiance in her eyes. "No, she said, her voice now strong and steady. I did not steal from him. I took $23 I had saved in my own mother's shoes. Virgil is a liar. He filed those charges to punish me. He did it because I humiliated him when I said I would never marry a man like him. No. This is about pride. A big shot like Virgil Connecade got told no by a woman he considered worthless, and his ego could not take it. This was never about theft, Deputy. It is about a man punishing a woman for not being his property. My own father sold me to Virgil to pay a debt. He figured I should be grateful any man would have me. Rollins stared at the floor, the silence heavy in the small cabin. Silas finally spoke. Then do the right thing. Walk away. Tell Connecade you lost her trail. Be the kind of lawman who protects folks, not one who hunts them for rich men. If you do not, he will just send someone else. Someone who will not ask questions. Then you stand with her, Silas urged, stepping closer. Use that badge for something that matters. Tell the truth about Connecade. You have until morning, her life or his money. You cannot have both. Rollins slumped by the fire, exhausted. Clara turned to Silas, her voice a whisper. You told him we are married. He nodded. Why? She asked. It was the fastest way to protect you. A married woman is harder to drag away than a lone one. Her eyes searched his. And if he calls your bluff? Silas looked her straight in the eye. Then we make it real. The words hung in the air between them. Her eyes widened in shock. You cannot mean that. I mean every word I say. I always have. They just stared at each other. We hardly know one another, she finally said. I know enough, he answered. She started to list her flaws, how her own father sold her like she was livestock. Stop, Silas said, his voice rough. Do not talk about yourself like you're something to be ashamed of. You walked into a stranger's home and saved his daughter. You cared for a baby that was not yours because it was the right thing to do. You faced down a lawman and told the truth. I do not give a damn what you weigh, Clara. I care about who you are. Tears welled in her eyes, and she hid her face against the baby. We will talk more in the morning, Silas said gently. Get some sleep. I will not let him take you. You have my word. He settled in his chair with his rifle, ready to stand between her and the storm, and waited for the dawn. Morning came cold and gray. Silas had not slept. Rollins woke up slowly, his gaze finding Silas right away. You stayed up all night. Someone had to, Silas replied. I am a lawman, not a criminal, Parker. Sometimes there is not much difference, Silas said. The deputy's jaw tightened. Clara emerged with Bertie in her arms, looking as tired as the men. She had been awake, listening in the dark, waiting to see if this lawman would drag her back to a living hell. The silence was thick as Clara warmed milk for the baby, her simple routine a small act of defiance. Rollins watched her soothe the little girl, a natural gesture that could not be faked. How old is she? He asked. 18 months, Clara said. Her mother is gone, Silas added. Fever took her. I am sorry, Rollins said, and he sounded like he meant it. Clara has been a blessing, Silas said. Bertie was sick with grief before she arrived. That is the kind of woman she is. She sees someone hurting and she has to help. Or maybe, Rollins said slowly, she was just running out of options and figured a lonely widower would be an easy mark. Clara flinched. Silas crossed the room in 2 long strides. Say that again. His voice was dangerously quiet. Apologize to her, now. Rollins looked at the pure hurt on Clara's face. Her arms tightened around the baby, as if for protection. Something shifted in the deputy's eyes. I apologize, he said stiffly. That was uncalled for. Clara turned away, her dismissal sharper than any punch. After a long silence, Rollins said, Miss Prescott, tell me about Virgil Connecade. The man, not the warrant. Clara faced him, her hands trembling but her voice steady. The first time Virgil hit me was 3 weeks after our engagement. I had a second helping of pie at a church social. In the buggy on the way home, he slapped me hard enough to split my lip. He told me every bite I took was an embarrassment to him. One time he bruised my arm for 2 weeks just because I laughed too loud. I had to wear long sleeves in the middle of summer. Clara's voice was steady, like she was talking about someone else. The worst time, though, was when he bought me a corset that was 3 sizes too small. He wanted me to lace it up so tight I couldn't draw a breath. When I said no, he put both hands around my throat and squeezed until everything went dark. He told me if I ever crossed him again, he'd finish the job. I showed my own father the marks on my neck. You know what he told me? He said Virgil was just showing me who was in charge, and I ought to be grateful any man would have me. So when I left Virginia City the night before our wedding, I wasn't stealing a thing. I was running for my life. I knew in my bones that if I married Virgil Kincaid, he would kill me one way or another. Rollins just stared at the floorboards, his hands shaking. "Why didn't you go to the sheriff?" he finally asked. Clara gave a dry laugh. "The sheriff and Virgil play cards every Thursday. The whole town owes that man money. Who's going to believe the fat cobbler's daughter over him?" Silas finally spoke up. "You knew all this?" Rollins asked him. "I knew enough. I knew she was scared, and I knew a man doesn't send a deputy through a blizzard for $300. He does it because something he thinks he owns got away from him." Rollins walked to the window and looked out at the snow. "I became a deputy to protect folks," he said, "to do what's right." "Then do what's right," Silas told him. "If I go back empty-handed, Kincaid will just send another man, maybe one who won't listen. Then don't just lie. Go back and tell the truth about what kind of man Kincaid really is. I could lose my badge for this. Kincaid's got powerful friends." "And Clara has scars," Silas said, real quiet. "Which one weighs more, deputy? Your job or her life?" Rollins looked at Clara, who stood by the fire holding Bertie. She just watched him, waiting to see what kind of man he was. "I believe you," Rollins said, "about all of it. And I'm sorry for chasing you down for a man like that." "You believe me?" Clara whispered. "I do. I'm riding back to Virginia City and telling Kincaid I lost your trail in the mountains. The warrant will be dropped. His word against a dead woman's. Case closed." "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick. "Don't thank me yet," Rollins said, his shoulders straightening. "Thank me in a year when you're still safe. But there's one more thing. This marriage you're claiming, you might want to make it real." A legal marriage would make it near impossible for him to ever bring up those theft charges again. Silas looked at Clara, and she was already looking right back at him. "Would you bear witness for us, deputy?" Silas asked. "If Miss Prescott agrees, it's the least I can do to make this right." They both looked at Clara, who had tears streaming down her face. She was caught somewhere between fear and a hope she hadn't felt in years. All she had to do was say yes to a man she'd only known for a week. "I need a little time to think," she whispered. "You've got till morning," Silas said gently. "Whatever you decide is fine. But I meant what I said, Clara. You're already family to me. This just makes it official." She nodded and went to her corner with the baby, her quiet sobs slowly turning into the even breaths of sleep. The next morning, the sun cut through the cabin windows, making everything sparkle. Silas found Clara by the window, looking out at the fresh, clean snow. "It's a fresh start, ain't it?" he asked. "Is that what this is?" she wondered. "If you want it to be." She turned to face him, her eyes full of the struggle she'd been through all night. "You need to understand, Silas. I'm damaged. Virgil didn't just hurt my body, he broke my trust in anything good. You'll be getting a woman who flinches at loud noises and might never believe she's worth all this." "You think I'm not damaged too?" Silas asked her. "I'm a widower who ran to the mountains with his baby because he couldn't face the world. I barely know how to talk to people anymore. You want to talk about broken? Just look at me, Clara." And she did. She looked deep into his eyes, and something inside her seemed to settle. "We're quite a pair, aren't we?" she said with a sad little smile. "Maybe two broken folks can hold each other up. But what if I can't love you? Then we'll be two friends who raise Bertie together. That's more than most folks get. And my body, Silas. I'm a big woman. This is who I am. Silas reached out and took her hand. I don't want you to be anyone else. You saved my daughter's life and made this cabin a home again. I don't care what you weigh, Clara. I care that you're brave and kind. The rest is just wrapping paper. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but when she opened her eyes again, she looked determined. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. He pulled her into a hug and she finally let go, sobbing against his chest. Rollins cleared his throat from across the room. Well, since she said yes, let's make this official before I head out. Simple and real, Clara said, wiping her eyes. That's all I want. So they stood in the middle of the cabin with Rollins acting as the preacher and Bertie watching from her blanket. Silas Harker, do you take Clara Prescott as your lawfully wedded wife? Silas looked at Clara. Her face was round and her eyes were scared but hopeful. He saw a courage in her that was more beautiful than anything the world called pretty. I do, he said, his voice sure and strong. I take Clara as my wife, my partner, and my family. I promise to protect her and to respect her, always. Clara Prescott, Rollins continued, do you take Silas Parker as your lawfully wedded husband? Silas took her trembling hands in his. I do, she said, her voice full of newfound strength. I take Silas as my husband and my family. By the authority of the Montana Territory, Rollins said, closing his journal, I now pronounce you husband and wife. The moment felt bigger than just a legal solution. It felt like a true beginning. Silas leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on Clara's forehead. It was a promise of patience and safety. When he pulled back, she was smiling through her tears. Congratulations, Rollins said. Mr. and Mrs. Parker, if you will both sign here, we will make it official. They signed their names on the same line, strange and perfect all at once. When the storm finally broke, a deputy named Rollins arrived. He saw the situation not with the eyes of the law, but with the heart of a good man. He carefully wrote out a marriage certificate and signed it himself as a witness. This document says you are a married woman under your husband's legal protection, Rollins told them. I will file the official copy in Virginia City. As for Virgil, I will tell him I lost your trail in the blizzard. He will assume you are gone for good. Rollins tipped his hat. Sometimes what is right and what is the law are not the same thing. As the deputy rode away, Silas stood with Clara and Bertie. He knew Virgil might still come looking. Let him come, Silas said, his voice steady and sure. He will learn very quickly that some things are worth dying to protect. The circuit rider left them standing in the quiet cabin. Well, he said, turning to her, you are my wife now. So it seems, she answered with a shaky laugh. This morning I was not sure, and now I am married to a man I have known for barely a week. Are you having second thoughts? No, maybe. I do not know. What if this is a mistake? Silas knelt down in front of her. Then we will figure it out together. That is what partners do. I have been running for so long I'm not sure how to stop. Then we will learn together, he said, taking her hands. I have been hiding out here for 16 months, and that is not so different from running. I am not promising it will be easy, but I think we can build something good here if we are both willing to try. I want to try, Clara whispered. I am just scared. So am I, Silas said, but I would rather be scared with you than safe by myself. Silas watched his new wife settle the baby on her hip. She held that little girl like she was born to do it. Well, Mrs. Harker, he said, trying the name out, what's next for our wedding day? Clara looked around the small cabin and gave him a real, hopeful smile. I think I'd like to make this place ours. That was a start. They spent the day rearranging the cabin, small changes that felt like they were building a foundation. That evening, the unspoken question hung in the air. I'll take the floor tonight, Silas said. Give you some room. Clara looked surprised. You don't have to. It's your bed. It's ours now, he said gently. But I don't want you feeling cornered. She reached out and touched his arm. Silas, I'd feel safer with you nearby, just for sleeping. It's better than being alone. His throat felt tight. You sure about that? I'm sure. They laid Bertie's cradle between them and settled down on the bed, fully clothed. It was strange, but it felt right. Silas, Clara whispered in the dark. Thank you for today, for not running. Thank you for staying, he answered, for taking a chance on a rough mountain man and his daughter. You're not broken, she said, just hurt. So am I. Maybe we can help each other heal. They listened to the fire crackle. Two strangers, now a family. The world outside was still a dangerous place, but in that cabin, something new and strong was taking root. Clara's voice came again, soft as a breath. I think I could love you someday. Silas's heart hammered in his chest. I think I could love you too, Clara, and I've got all the time in the world. The days found a rhythm. Silas taught Clara how to handle a rifle out in the clearing. You're holding it too tight, he told her, adjusting her grip. Let the gun do the work. Her hands shook. She'd never held a weapon before. I don't know if I can. You can, and you have to protect yourself and Bertie when I'm gone. She set her jaw and fired. The shot missed by a country mile. That was awful. That was your first try, he said. Breathe slow. Squeeze the trigger. Don't yank it. She fired again and again. By afternoon, she could hit the target 4 times out of 10. Not great, but enough. Good enough to make a man think twice. In return, Clara taught Silas things he'd struggled with, like how to braid Bertie's hair without a fuss, and how to make decent oatmeal. They learned about each other in the quiet moments, building trust one day at a time. 2 weeks after the wedding, Silas came home to find Clara writing a letter. It's to my sisters, she said, blushing. Just to let 'em know I'm alive and married. I'll send it through my aunt so it's safe. He nodded. We'll get it posted next time we're in town. That should be safe enough. What are you going to tell folks? The truth? That you up and married some mountain man? That you have a daughter now, stubborn as a rock but sweet as a peach? That you are building a life? Clara corrected him gently. A life that is ours. That word, ours, settled deep and warm in his chest. Later by the fire, she asked, Do you ever think about Emmeline? What she would think of all this? The question did not sting like it used to. Silas set down his work. I think about her every day. I think she would be happy. Emmeline hated the idea of Bertie growing up without a mother. She would have seen the good in you. Do you have any regrets? Silas finally asked. Clara looked at him, her gaze steady. Not a single one. For the first time, I have a say in my own story. My father chose my husband. Virgil chose how I would live. But this marrying you and staying here, this was my choice. Weeks passed, and the bitter Montana winter held on. Silas found himself watching Clara, the way she hummed when she cooked or the rare, bright smile she gave. He was falling for her, slow and sure. One evening she was winning at cards, laughing at his terrible poker face. You are cheating, Silas accused. No, sir, you are just easy to read. Every time you have a good hand, you rub the scar on your nose. He did it right then, without thinking. Clara burst out laughing, a sound that made the small cabin feel twice as big. Just then, Bertie whimpered in her sleep. Clara rose to check on her. Silas watched his wife and daughter in the firelight. And a wall that had been up for 16 long months finally came down. He loved her. Not maybe. Not someday. He loved her now. The feeling was not like thunder. It was like a slow sunrise. Clara, he said. She turned back to him. I am just glad you are here. Her smile was real, the kind that lit up her whole face. I am glad I am here too. But the peace was broken by the sound of hoofbeats in the dead of night. Before the sound even registered, Silas was awake and grabbing his rifle. 16 months of sleeping with one eye open paid off. "Riders," he said, his voice a low rumble. "5 of them." Clara was out of bed in a second, scooping up Birdie. "Get behind the bed, take the small rifle. You defend our girl first, you hear me?" Her face was white in the moonlight, but she nodded and got into position. Silas saw the lead rider. Even in the dark, the man carried himself with an arrogance that soured the air. A fist hammered on the door. "Silas Harker," a smooth voice called. "I am Virgil Cade. I have come to collect what belongs to me." "There is no Clara Prescott here," Silas answered. "Just my wife, Clara Harker, and she is not going anywhere." Cade let out a laugh that made Silas's skin crawl. "Your wife? How clever, resourceful when she is desperate." Behind him, Silas heard Clara's sharp intake of breath. "We are legally married," Silas said, his voice level. "If you want proof, come back in the daylight with a real lawman, not these hired thugs." "I paid a fair price for her." Concade's voice turned to a snarl. "Now you open this door and hand over what is mine. If you do not, my men will burn this cabin down with you inside it." Silas turned and looked at his wife. He saw her terror, but underneath it, he saw complete trust. She believed he could stand between her and the monster at the door. "Last chance!" Concade yelled. Silas made his choice. He threw the door open and fired. The rifle blast split the night. One man screamed and fell, clutching his shoulder. The second man stumbled back. Silas fired again, a warning shot that went wide. But Virgil Concade was not a man who took warnings. He pulled a pistol and fired. Wood splintered inches from Silas's head. The hired gun spread out, firing from the cover of the trees. Bullets slammed into the log walls. 5 against 1 were bad odds. Then Clara fired. The shot was wild, but it made one of the men yelp and dive for cover. Now they knew. There were 2 guns in the cabin. "Good shot," Silas called to her. "I was aiming for his leg and almost hit the sky." Another bullet ripped through the window, burying itself in the wall just a foot from where Clara and Birdie huddled. The baby woke up screaming. Silas's blood ran cold. "Clara, I am going out there." "No, they will kill you. They will kill all of us if I stay in here. I have to take the fight to them." He moved to the small back window. "Keep our daughter safe." "You keep yourself safe," she whispered. "Come back to us." Silas squeezed through the window and dropped silent into the snow. He crept close and listened to the hired guns talking. They were city boys, clumsy in the wild and used to bullying, not fighting. On his mountain, Silas was the predator. He circled around through the trees, quiet as a shadow. The first man went down from a rifle butt to the skull, never seeing it coming. The second man was behind a log. Silas snapped a twig to draw his attention, then came from the other side. A quick, sharp fight, and the man was down. The scream let the others know. "He's outside," Concade's voice cracked with panic. "Kill him!" Silas vanished into the darkness. This was his home turf. The third man made the mistake of hunting alone. "Looking for me?" Silas asked from right behind him. The man whirled, but a rifle butt to the jaw ended his search. 3 down. Concade and the last man opened fire wildly into the brush. The last gunman came looking, but he didn't know the land. He stumbled and Silas was on him like a rock slide. 4 down. Silas stood, breathing hard, when a shot rang out from his left. The bullet's heat passed his ear. He saw Virgil Concade just 10 feet away, pistol shaking in his hand. "You should have stayed out of it," Concade snarled, his fancy city clothes a mess. "She was never yours to own," Silas said. Concade fired again, the shot going wild. As Silas raised his rifle, another shot cracked through the cold air. But it wasn't from his gun. It was from the cabin. Virgil Concade stumbled, staring down at his bleeding shoulder. He looked up in disbelief. Clara stood in the doorway, rifle raised steady, smoke curling from the barrel. Her face was hard as stone. "I choose myself," she said, her voice ringing clear. I choose my family, and I choose for you to leave and never come back." Consincade fell to his knees in the snow, clutching his arm. "You shot me," he whispered, like a spoiled child. "I should have done it a long time ago," Clara said, "before I let you make me feel like I was worthless." Some folks think they can own a person, but Silas was fixin' to teach Virgil Concaid a hard lesson in the snow. This story is about what happens when a good man, pushed too far, decides to protect his own. It is a reminder that family is not just something you have, it is something you fight for. Silas moved like lightning, kicking Concade's pistol away. He stood over the hired men, all of them groaning on the ground, completely broken. He hauled the so-called merchant to his feet. Silas looked him dead in the eye and said, "You will get on your horse. Take your men, and you will tell everyone that Clara Prescott Harker is my wife and forever out of your reach. If you so much as whisper her name again, I will find you, and I will end you. That is not a threat. It is a promise from a man with everything to protect." What Concaid saw in Silas's eyes shattered his world. All his life he had taken what he wanted, but that was over. He and his men rode away, defeated. Concaid tried to sound tough, yelling, "This is not over," but his voice was just an empty echo against the mountain. Silas watched them disappear into the darkness, then finally let the weight of it all hit him. He was exhausted and terrified, but alive. Clara stood in the doorway, holding their little girl, Birdie. Tears streamed down her face. Silas wrapped his arms around them both, holding on tight. "It is over," he whispered. "You are safe." "I shot him," Clara said, her voice shaking. "I actually shot him." "You saved my life," Silas told her. "He had me cornered. That shot you took, that saved me. You hit his shoulder, not his heart. You did just enough to stop him." Clara looked at him, and the fear in her eyes was gone. In its place was a strength that had been forged in the fire of that terrible night. "I am not running anymore," she said. "This is my home. You and Birdie are my family, and I will fight for us." Silas knew she meant it. He had seen her courage firsthand. "We are braver together," he said, and they held each other as the first light of dawn touched the sky. Their cabin was damaged, but it was still standing, just like them. And Concaid was riding away knowing the woman he tried to break had put a bullet in him herself. "I love you, Silas Harker," Clara said, burying her face in his chest. "Not someday, right now." His arms tightened around her. "I love you too." "I love you too, Clara. Have for a long while now." Birdie squirmed between them, and their shaky laughter cut through the tension. It was a messy, real kind of perfect. Silas carried them back inside, shutting the door on the darkness. The next days were a quiet blur of work. He patched the bullet-riddled walls while she scrubbed the bloodstains from the porch. They did not talk about it. They just focused on surviving, because life sure was not going to wait for them. 3 nights later, Clara broke the silence. "Do you reckon he will come back?" Silas had been wrestling with that same thought. "No, he is a coward. He will go home and spin some yarn about bandits to save face." Clara was quiet, then admitted, "I keep seeing his face when I pulled the trigger." "That is normal," Silas said. "Have you ever—" The question hung in the air. "Once. A claim jumper. It was him or me. Does it get easier?" "No. But you remember who you were protecting. That helps." She found his hand in the dark, a solid anchor. A couple of weeks later, a rider came up the trail, slow and steady. It was Deputy Chester Rollins. Over coffee, he laid it all out. Concaid had limped back to Virginia City, telling folks a wild tale about a bear attack to explain his shoulder. "Nobody bought it," Rollins said, "but they are not going to challenge a man with his money." The charges against Clara were dropped quiet-like. As far as anyone back there knows, she perished in the mountains. "Good," Clara said. "Let them think that." "There is more," Rollins said, pulling out a paper. "I filed your marriage certificate. It is all official." Silas held the document, proof that their life together was real. Rollins stood to go, explaining he had resigned. He was headed north to a place that needed real law, not a rich man's rules. "You all built something good here," the deputy said before riding off. Clara leaned against Silas. "It really is over, is it not?" "Yeah," he said. "It is over." Spring finally broke through, washing the mountains clean. Life came rushing back. Birdie took her first wobbly steps, looking determined as all get out. Silas added a new room to the cabin, and Clara started a garden, the first that mountain had ever seen. On a trip to town, Clara walked with her head held high, wearing the simple silver coin ring Silas had made her. People stared, but she did not flinch. "Let them look," she told Silas. "I spent 23 years trying to be invisible. I am done with that." One night, Clara sat Silas down, her face a mix of fear and joy. "Silas," she said, placing a hand on her stomach, "I think I am pregnant." The news was a gut punch, stirring old ghosts of what he had lost with Emmeline. But Clara's expression held a fragile hope. "How do you feel about it?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted, "but happy, too." "That makes two of us," he said. Her grip on his hands tightened. "Promise me something. If it is a choice between me and the baby, you choose me. You choose us." Life found a rhythm. Summer arrived, green and full of promise. Clara's belly grew, and she glowed with a kind of beauty no town woman could match. They found a midwife in Elk Fork, an old woman named Martha with wise eyes, who said Clara was as fit as a fiddle and built strong for childbirth. On the way home, they stopped at a small church. Silas told the circuit preacher they were already married, but wanted to say the words right this time, with God as their witness. It was not a union born of desperation anymore. It was a union of love. The preacher smiled kindly, so they stood together with little Birdie between them and made their promises again. "I take you, Clara," Silas said, his voice thick with emotion, "to love and to cherish for as long as I draw breath." Clara answered through happy tears, "I take you, Silas, to love and to cherish for all time." He kissed his wife, a deep and real kiss that sealed every promise he ever planned to keep. When her time came in late August, it was fast and hard. Silas rode like the wind to get Martha. While Clara's cries filled the small cabin, Silas fought his own demons. The sounds brought back the memory of losing his first wife, and he prayed harder than he had in 2 years. "Please, not again." Then a new sound cut through the air. It was a baby's cry, loud and strong. Martha called out, "It is a boy, healthy as a horse and mad about it." Silas rushed in to see Clara, exhausted but radiant, holding the tiniest, angriest baby he had ever laid eyes on. His son. "Luke," Clara whispered. "We will call him Luke Harker." When they brought Birdie in to meet her little brother, she poked his foot and declared, "My baby!" And just like that, they were a family of 4, all piled together. Silas held them close, thinking how life can ambush you with goodness right when you have given up all hope. Those first few months after Luke was born were the hardest they had ever faced. The baby would scream something fierce for hours, and little Birdie, feeling left out, would throw fits that shook the walls. Worn down to the bone, Clara and Silas snapped at each other over little things, but they never fought mean. After every storm, they came back together, apologized, and remembered their promise. On the worst nights, Clara would say, "We chose this life and we will figure it out." And they always, always did. Before long, their little cabin began to feel like a real home again. One cold winter night, Clara took Silas outside to watch the northern lights dance across the sky. She asked if he ever regretted the quiet life, worrying their children would grow up lonely. Silas reckoned the wild would make them strong and teach them to value love when they found it. They made a promise then that when their children were grown, they would be free to choose their own path, just like their parents had. The years rolled on, filled with hard work and changing seasons, each one making their family tougher than the last. Clara found a way to get letters to her family, and the news that they were all safe and sound brought her a deep sense of peace. Soon she realized she was pregnant again. This time, there was only a quiet certainty. They welcomed a baby girl and named her Emmeline. It was Clara's idea to honor the woman who helped make Silas the man she loved. With 3 children, the cabin was louder and more beautiful than anything Silas had ever imagined. He told Clara he loved her more than words could say. She just smiled and reminded him he once pointed a gun at her chest. 20 years passed in the blink of an eye. Another family settled in the valley, and a small community grew, all on the Harkers' own terms. One evening on the porch, as the sun set, they could hear their grandchildren laughing down below. "We built something that will last," Clara said softly. Silas took her hand, thinking about the desperate stranger who stumbled into his life and changed everything. He admitted he thought he was going crazy that first night, while she thought he was about to shoot her. "Well," he said with a grin, "the thought did cross my mind. But you let me stay," Clara said, her smile still hitting him right in the chest. "And every good thing in our lives came from that one choice." Silas looked at her weathered hands, the same ones that had gently thawed his frozen heart all those years ago. "You saved me, Clara," he told her, his voice heavy with truth. "I reckon we saved each other," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. They were 2 people the world had broken, who had managed to put each other back together stronger than before. The cabin had grown right alongside their family, but it was still the same home they had fought for. It was proof that 2 broken people could choose to be brave instead of safe. Clara had arrived thinking she was worthless, and Silas had hidden away thinking love was done with him. They had both been dead wrong. They found each other in a blizzard over a hungry baby and a warm fire. And from that unlikely start, they built a life that proved everyone who ever doubted them wrong. Not because it was easy, but because they chose it every single day. And that choice made all the difference. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.